Human Tech, a podcast about the intersection of humans and technology. Today, we have Dr. Susan Weinschenk. Hello.
Hi there.
And I am Guthrie Weinschenk. Now, today we are going to talk, our topic today is the science of decision-making. And we picked this topic for a variety of reasons. I mean, one, it's obviously interesting, and decision-making is something that kind of combines lots of important kind of human aspects of what we do in life. But also, we've been doing a fair bit of work about it as we are putting together a couple presentations that we give to various places. And so we're doing some work on it, and so we have the research nice and fresh and ready. So we thought we'd do a podcast on it. Now, I just want to quick say before we start, again, if you haven't told friends about the podcast, please do. It continues to grow in popularity, but we'd like even more followers, and also subscribe and give us ratings. We really do need the ratings so that it looks like our podcast is super popular, so we get more people. So with that, Susan, you wanna start with a little overview about decisions?
Yeah, we kind of had a hard time deciding what to do a podcast on today.
That's why we chose decisions. It was ironic.
It is ironic.
Yeah, that was the funny part about it.
Well, there's some great, pretty recent research out about decision making and how we make decisions. And you know me, I love research, so.
Yeah, I mean, and one of the things that we find so interesting about this, and that people who hire us find so interesting about this whole field, is, there's a whole, one of the talks we give, it's, what is it called? The 5 things everyone needs to know about people.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the kind of sections that we have is basically that, we as humans walk around thinking that we are doing things, that we are thinking things, and then we are taking action, and right, that we as a conscious being have control.
We are masters of our destiny.
We are masters of our ship, of our domain. And this is not true at all. We are blobs of brains that are doing their own thing, and making their own decisions, and your subconscious is doing unconscious.
Yeah, we should explain. People sometimes write into me and they say, "Why do you use the term unconscious?" Unconscious means, like you're in a coma. Because I talk a lot and I write a lot about unconscious mental processing.
And I always used to use subconscious because that's just what I grew up with. But I've been trying to retool,
retrain yourself. Well, just to mention, the reason we say unconscious rather than subconscious is because in the research literature, when people do research on this, when they do research on mental processing that we're not aware of, or how decisions are made that we're not consciously aware of, they use the term unconscious. Right. So subconscious is kind of...
It's more of a Freudian...
Yeah, and in the popular language, people talk about things, subconscious things, but in the research world, they talk about unconscious. So which
makes the unconscious... Because sub would make it seem as if it's inferior.
Yeah, sub is supposed to mean that it's just below the level of consciousness.
Right. But it's the same, it's all the brain.
But I think the reason that the researchers went to unconscious was just to distance themselves purposely from Freud.
Okay, so back to...
You don't want to hear about all these little inside psychology arguments? I don't blame you. No, I'm teasing. No, we got, but anyway, I just wanted to mention that. So yes, back to what you were saying, that we are not conscious masters.
We are just human blobs, and our unconscious is kind of doing things. And then, the big idea is that basically the unconscious just wants a burger or smells some ice cream or whatever it is. And then it pushes that thought, bloop, it bubbles it up, and then it kind of shows up in your conscious brain, and you think that you had a thought, when really you didn't really have much of anything. You're You're just not. Now there are certainly some things that you do consciously, but most of what it is, it's kind of like like, well, I could use a computer analogy, but like it's the graphical user interface over the actual computing work, right? So it looks pretty, right? Conscious, it's like this wonderful thing that's the human whatever, but underneath it, all the work is just being done
by zeros and ones.
By zeros, well, yeah, I mean it's the brain, but so it's neural networks, but essentially, right? It's all the brain. The brain is it's doing its own thing, and the thing that it's doing is much closer to like a cat than it is to Aristotle. And
well, I don't know if I would agree with that, but yes, you're right. That and
I don't know, man. Cats they act on this like deep, kind of emotional. They live in this emotional state, and that's the emotional state that I think makes most of our decisions.
Well, okay, wait a minute, but I'm gonna.
I mean, obviously we're more sophisticated.
No, I'm gonna challenge you a little bit.
Much more.
I'm gonna challenge you a little bit. So, first of all, yes, absolutely. Most of our decisions are made unconsciously, and as people who listen to this podcast know, I'm sure we've said it before, and I'm sure we're going to say it again in other podcasts. Most mental processing of any kind, not just decisions, most processing of information happens unconsciously. So it's no surprise that decisions are made unconsciously. But I do want to, and although a lot of our decisions are made by and are influenced by our thoughts, our feelings and our emotions, like you said, the cats are just making emotional decisions. There are parts of the brain that are processing information not in an emotional way, just processing information, and that's also unconscious. So I don't want to imply that if we say decisions are made unconsciously, it means that decisions are made all from an emotional feeling point of view. That's not true. There's actually a lot of logical, rational decision making going on, but even that is not conscious. So that's, I think, to me, that's an important distinction.
Okay.
Because I don't want people to feel like, oh, I'm just walking around making decisions and it's all based on my gut and my emotions and there's no rational thought going into it. There's just not much rational conscious thought going into it. The other thing that's kind of weird and interesting is that what happens is, as you said, your unconscious makes a decision. It eventually bubbles up into consciousness, and we're going to talk about that whole process, I hope, in this podcast. But then you become aware of it, and then you might talk about it, but then you will feel compelled to put a reason behind your decision, and so you essentially make one up, and that's consciously I'd say, oh yeah, I decided to do this because
we're rolling right into Research Alley. So you might as well just back up and just talk about this study, because I know exactly to what you were referring to.
You do? Because I wasn't talking about a particular research project. I was just talking.
Oh, well, I know, but like, why do you think that way?
No, I was just going to say that what we tend to do is put on top of it a rational reason about why we did what we did, and we'll believe the rational reason. Research study. Really? What research study are you talking about?
Oh, look, I don't have it right in front of me. It's the one with people with brain disorders who have a part of their brain is missing or gone, and so they'll make decisions, and then the person, the researcher, will be like, well, why did you make that decision? And they'll come up with some reason, even though it's not true at all.
Yeah.
Like the researcher, it's like people without short-term memory loss or something. You gotta help me out here. And the researcher would be like, go pick up like a glass of water.
Yeah, that's actually not the research I was thinking of. Yeah, I understand what you're saying.
Am I just making this up?
No, there is a study that shows that, and that's really more about they're given a stimulus to one part of the brain, but they're not aware of having received that stimulus. And so they take action on it.
So do you want to just explain this? Because I think it illuminates the point that you made well.
Yeah. So people who have certain kinds of brain damage are not aware of the fact that they've even seen something or felt something or read something or heard something, depending on which part of the brain is not functioning.
Right. So they get the stimulus, right?
They get the stimulus. They see
something.
They see the glass of water, or they see the picture of a glass of water, but they're not aware in their conscious brain that they've seen it.
Right.
Because that's happening in an unconscious part, because that is a part of the brain that isn't working.
It's damaged. Yeah.
But then if you ask them, to take an action on what they saw, they will take the action because they did see it.
So they'll be like, so they'll have like a picture of a cool, crisp glass of water.
Yeah.
That consciously they will not have seen.
Yeah.
Okay. Or I think I remember like a researcher saying like, go, like, you are very thirsty or something.
Yeah, you're very thirsty. Go get a glass of water. So then they'll go
so then they'd wait. And then they'd ask them, so how are you feeling?
And the person will say, I'm feeling very thirsty.
And they're like, why are you feeling thirsty?
And they'll say, I worked really hard today and I haven't had much to drink. They'll just make up a reason that is logical, even though that's not the real reason. So we know that
they'll really believe it.
They'll really believe it. Yeah, no, if you said to them, you're just doing that because, they'll say, no, really. I really worked hard today out in the garden and I'm really thirsty. And so the idea, so the research does show that. And what we also know, though, is that's not just from being brain damaged, that the rest of us are doing it too. That we're all having these thoughts and these mental process decisions
based on input that we get.
But we're not aware of it, and then we make up a reason on top of it. And, so it's really interesting for people who do like usability work or
like you. Just as background, Susan has done many years of usability work and interviews, right? Where
market research,
where she'll go interview people who are actually using a product, right?
Right. And you say, why did you, why do you need this product? Why did you buy this product?
They'll give you a reason.
They'll talk, and it'll sound really convincing, but and it really, it's put a damper on my research, on my consulting work, because I got to the point where as I was writing some of my books and I write about, this unconscious mental processing and decision making, and I was reading the research and writing about it, and I was going, oh, shoot, because it really calls into question the whole technique of interviewing people and asking them what they want and why they want it. And they sound so convincing, but now I don't believe them. So it's a real problem. It's a real problem, and we're starting to get now into neural measurements, right? Yep. Which we've talked about before on the podcast.
As an aside, I have a friend who works for, I believe it's Gallup polling.
Yeah.
And they are right on the forefront of this kind of,
ask people, right?
Yeah. So, well, no, of neural measurement.
Oh, they're doing neural measurements.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, she got me on one of the lists, because they do these studies, right? They give you some money and you come in, and so like I came in and they put all the little neurons on my head.
I didn't know you did this.
Yeah. This was actually a year ago. They put the cap on, and then you go into a room, and they have eye tracking kind of set up, and I believe they have like a galvanic finger response thing.
Yeah.
And then they show you a bunch of the ads.
Yeah, I didn't know you did that.
Yeah. It was it was kind of neat. And then of course they'd ask you what you think about it, and I'm sure they compare like how you rate things to what you're actually thinking.
Huh. Yeah. So that's, I mean, the problem with that, there's several problems with that. I mean, you're only going to get, there's only, you get these neural measurements and you can kind of set up situations in neural measurements and you get some data, but you still don't really know exactly what people are thinking or what to do about it.
Well, it's the field is young.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, the other interesting whole part about this is that humans are actually we're very susceptible to outside things, and so
You mean outside influences?
yeah. So, there's a whole world of, well, once we get into brain implants, if you could have, for example, brain viruses, that essentially would trigger input into the brain that the brain wouldn't necessarily, like, consciously you wouldn't know you were receiving.
Yeah.
That would then influence your behavior because you're getting this stimulus that's telling you to do something.
Right, and by viral, you didn't mean biologically viral. You meant electronically. Yeah, well, absolutely.
Yes.
I mean,
so like once we have brain implants, right, you'd be able to hack brains.
That technology exists. It's being tested by DARPA, the U.S. intelligence, military, whatever the heck.
Oh, that's
DARPA
right.
does.
Yeah. You should tell people about this DARPA research.
Yeah. So DARPA has been experimenting with just what you said, with putting brain implants in. Now, what they'll say, and I'm not saying I don't believe them, I just don't necessarily believe this is the whole story, but what they'll say is that they want to put brain implants into soldiers who are having difficulty, like, controlling their impulses, right? Mm-hmm. People who've had some kind of brain damage or mental
PTSD,
health issue,
strokes.
And so they want to be able to, like, short circuit a rage response, right?
And from a background perspective, basically they're monitoring brain waves and brain activity, and when it detects a certain pattern of brain activity, that would either be like a
seizure,
like
or a rage, a violence, that kind of thing.
That it would, then what happens is it basically just shocks the brain and kind of and stops the kind of churning of the activity that the brain is kind of spiraled into, almost like a it doesn't like stop it entirely, but you can almost think of it as like a defibrillator, where then it resets it to a normal.
Right, and they're doing this. They're so interested in this that they've actually have a wing of their group that is just about what's the easiest way to insert one of these devices into a brain, make it really easy. So because it's a little scary doing brain surgery on people to insert, electrodes, but so they have these special devices now that make it really easy to insert, and it's inserted at a really surface level, so they don't have to go deep in the brain, and they can go just right at your scalp, and but it calls into question all kinds of things, right? I mean, what, as you said, what other thing, once you have a device in the brain,
I'm like, because right now the devices are basically they're just bludgeoning sticks. Like, that's how sophisticated they are, right? It's either, it's just sending kind of random electrical shocks. But if you could, in the future, when instead of random shocks, you're actually sending
information, data.
Right.
Well,
to specific,
there's
neural pathways, which is really easy. All you have to do is you just have to send the right electrical, impulse to the right chain of neurons.
Right, and actually, I mean, that's done a lot. That we know how to do. We're just not necessarily doing it with these DARPA implants near the scalp.
Right. So, for example, if you do brain surgery, right, they always they got to make sure they're in the right spot, right?
Yeah.
So they have a little probe, and the person's awake because there's not pain receptors.
And they
and
want them
brain.
awake because they want to get feedback. They want.
Yeah, exactly. So they'll send a little, they'll touch it's just, has a little electrical current, and they'll touch a spot in the brain, and the guy's hand will wave. It's like, oh, that's kind of, and right, they're
all
making
kinds of things. Yeah, absolutely. So many things that we can do. We know that if we send a certain kind of electrical pulse to certain parts of the brain, we can erase memories.
Right.
Like, that's possible to do. There is really interesting research. There's a research study with primates, not humans, but I am not sure which primates, baboons or
primates.
Primates.
There was a primate involved.
Where they took the researchers took three, let's just say it's baboons since I don't remember. And they had them, each of them in a different location. I'm trying to remember how this was done. They're in a different location. They are all in front of a computer screen. They have brain implants inside them, and they have the brain. They have the brain waves connected over Wi-Fi. You can do that, right, over the internet. So they are collecting brain waves from one baboon and sending it over the internet to another baboon. And they had these 3 baboons wired like this. Now the baboons don't know that they're wired up, connected to other baboons, but they could actually, and they were doing they do these tasks on. It's fascinating. We have these baboons in front of computer screens, and they do these tasks where they choose, the orange square versus the blue square, and based on which one they choose, they'll get a reward, that kind of thing, right? They actually were able to get one baboon to decide that it wanted to push the orange button, to transfer that information to another baboon in a different location, and have that baboon push the orange button. So these animals were making decisions that were then sent to other animals, and the other animals were acting on the decision,
right,
not knowing that it wasn't coming from their own
brain. It's like
brain.
Avatar.
Which is just like, to me, that's just like, wild. But let's talk about, while we're talking about research and all, let's talk about some of the crazy research, I think, that's done on humans too. So for instance, if you make a decision, let's say you're not a baboon, let's say you're you, but you have to make a decision about, pressing the red button or the green button on the computer display. If we have the right electrodes in your brain so we can see what's going on, and we can see, it's not even electrodes in your brain, I'll back up. If we have you, for instance, in an fMRI or some other device where we can see your brain activity, you can actually see that a decision has been made and which decision has been made, the red button.
I really like this research. This research is
really
fun.
You can see in the brain that a decision has been made, B, which decision it was, and you can see that 7 seconds before the person becomes aware of the fact that they have made a decision and which the decision they've made.
Yeah, it's like a car shifting into gears. So you tell it to shift into gears, it shifts, and then after a little bit, it finally clunks in, and then the car can move. Like there's a little bit of delay. The brain has to do the work to make the decision.
Yeah.
And it's like, all right, we have the decision. We need to send it up to to the guy upstairs.
Yeah, and you can see that happening, and so
it's cool.
People watching your brain know what decisions you've made before you've made them. Before you've become aware of them.
Sure.
So that just shows you how much this is like, not under conscious control. But I have some other stuff too. You want to hear about more interesting brain research about decisions?
Just keep going.
Okay. So have you ever heard? This was back in 2005, so it was a while ago. Stephen Colbert started using the term truthiness. Did you ever hear him talk about truthiness?
Yes.
And so he describes truthiness as knowing in your gut that something is true, as opposed to knowing through facts, logic, or evidence. And And he did, but did you know that he didn't invent that word?
No, I don't know anything about it.
Truthiness appears in the Oxford English Dictionary as a form of the word truthy or truthfulness many years before Colbert used it. But there is research that shows that people do believe that information they feel is correct from their gut is more true. So we're able to we do have the sense of what's true or not. So if I ask you, is China a country in Asia, you'd probably be able to answer that question just by relying on your knowledge and your memory. But if I asked you, is there a Gutenberg printing press museum in Mainz, Germany? You may, and then you go, yeah, I think so, yeah. So no, maybe there isn't. So there are some questions where we tend to use our gut more than other questions.
I don't think that. I think a better question would be, so for example, what if it's like an emotional thing? So it's like, do you like dogs?
Yeah.
Is that a better example than China's in Asia?
Well, if asking is China a country in Asia is an example of when you're not using your gut, you're not using truthiness. You're just combing your memory.
Okay, so what is an example of when you do?
Well, yeah. Well, certainly, if I ask you if you like dogs, that's a gut question. But the idea is that even some of the non-feeling questions, some of the factual questions, you will if you're not sure, you'll go to your gut for confirmation. I'm going to say the answer is yes, but then you check with yourself, how sure am I? So there's the decision, and then there's how sure you are of the decision. And if it's something you're not sure of, you may go to your gut to tell you, yeah, that's
so
the right thing.
For example, who was the 34th president?
Yeah, and you say
34 maybe 34 is even too hard.
I think it was like
38th.
Yeah, and you're like, well, okay,
like,
so
okay, we have like
this
42
is
now.
Obama's
So
this. So I'm gonna say I think it was Clinton, and then someone will Bill Clinton, and then someone will say, you sure about that? And you'll go, and you'll just have this gut feeling of I'm sure, I'm not sure, right?
Yeah.
Let's see. Some other research is that you can affect this feeling of truthiness, okay, just by repeating information a lot. So you can give people false information, but if you give it to them enough times, then they start to believe that it's true just because they heard it a lot. The media? Is that what you're saying?
Sorry,
yeah. So just by saying something false over and over and over, and then I hear it and I hear it and I hear it and I hear it, eventually my gut is going to say, yeah, that's true. So we equate...
there's a whole thing, because Bill Simmons has a whole theory about this, essentially, which is in today's world of media, because everyone's so exposed, right? Like, you don't just hear a story once in the paper and maybe next week you'll have a follow-up, if there's a big story in your world, whether it's sports or, pop culture or science, like whatever it is, like if there's a story, you get the story dozens of times through Facebook and the news sources you read, because it's all everyone has the same big stories, and you're just swathed with so much info. So basically, whoever has the story first, that's the story, that's the narrative that gets repeated the first time you ingest it, and you get hit with it like a bunch of different times, dozens and dozens of times. And so then even if later, right, as maybe more facts come out and the narrative changes, like that is what is true about that story, or at least the outer bounds, from kind of how significant it is, has already been set by the public, and it's done and decided, and they'll just kind of most of them just will ignore anything else because their minds have already been made up.
Yeah, yeah. All right, now here's another one. You want more?
Sure.
So if you add a photo to that fake information, then it's even more powerful. So there's this guy, Stephen Frenda, who did research on this. So he showed photos with these news clips for political events that had occurred over the last 10 years. But some of them were real and some of them were altered, so they looked real. So he had, for instance, a fake story of President George W. Bush at the wheel of a pickup truck with Roger Clemens. You know who Roger Clemens is?
Yes. For those of you who don't know, famous baseball player, famous for the 2004 ALCS, the blood on the sock as he pitched the Red Sox back in. He became a commentator for ESPN and was recently fired for his very strange kind of conservative and
he's a
homophobic
controversial
remarks.
figure.
Yeah.
Anyway, they took
Probably did steroids.
They took President George Bush at the wheel of a pickup truck, and he's there with Roger Clemens. And then they had text that said September 1st, 2005, as parts of New Orleans lie underwater in the wake of Hurricane Katrina, President Bush entertains Houston Astros pitcher Roger Clemens at his ranch in Crawford, Texas. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
And then, so they showed this to people, and then they asked people, they gave them 4 options. You either had to say, I remember seeing this, or I don't remember seeing it, but I remember it happening, or I don't remember this at all, or I have a different memory of how it happened. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
And then they also had free-form questions like,
I don't remember this at all.
that was one of them.
Okay.
And then
that's my answer to this particular story.
well, because it didn't happen. It was a fake story.
Wow.
That's why you don't remember it. Anyway, they said, how did you feel about this event at the time? And looking back, how do you feel about it today? So they tested 2,650 people. That's a lot of people.
Big study.
So at the beginning of the study, they gave people 3 true events. This was just to see how good were people at remembering stuff even when it was true. And most of the people, 82%, chose either I remember seeing it or I remember it happening for the true events.
That's
okay.
Good. Okay. Yeah, sure.
And 98% remembered seeing at least 2 of the 3. And then they gave them
It's very good.
one of the fake events and the photos.
Yeah.
Right? They had a bunch of them.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Half of the people reported that they remembered the false event. And
great.
of those that reported remembering the event, half of those, or 27% of everybody, said that they not only remembered the event, they remembered seeing that photo on the news.
Yeah. Yeah.
And only 6% of the people said they remembered it differently. And the rest of them, 44%, said that they didn't remember the event.
It's great.
But and then they had another one where they had Hillary Clinton campaigning for the Democratic nomination in 2008,
Mm-hmm.
and that was a fake one. And they actually had people writing in things like, I thought it was just a desperate move, and it solidified my disgust with Mrs. Clinton as a candidate. Like, and it didn't happen.
Yeah, so this is part of my larger argument that just people are just stupid sheep, and they just float around. They like to feel like they're making decisions, and like they have, like this handle on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it's a fun feeling. It's like it's the same as I want to like I want to, like we said in the last episode, I want to take a side. I just like being on this side because it's fun. It feels good to be here and be in an argument. And people just kind of drift through life, making their brains are.
So we're not saying, so we're telling people if they want someone to believe something false, use a photo, but I didn't say that.
Oh, and this just solidifies how great people make as eyewitness with the eyewitness testimony. From
well, that's a whole.
Later.
We're going to do a whole podcast on memory, Ugh. So that yes, this has to do with memory. All right, I have more. You want more?
Yeah, sure.
All right.
So this is a research-packed.
So another thing we know is that people will make a decision. Like if they're trying to, like they're weighing different alternatives, or they haven't decided, or they're thinking about buying
decide
something.
which brand of cereal to get.
Right, or they haven't decided to, whether I should buy a car or not, or or which car I should buy, or there's just this. They're considering a decision, but they haven't made the decision. So one thing we now know is that confidence is what triggers the decision.
Yeah.
So you will make the decision when you finally feel, whenever the point is that you feel confident that you are making the best or the right decision, even though that might not be true, right?
Right.
You might not really have enough information. You might not be making the best decision. But if you feel like you are, then that's when you go.
Let's go for it.
And you can actually, this research is done, you can watch neurons firing, also done with primates. And when the confidence is there, then they'll do it.
So, here's an ancillary story about myself.
Yeah.
As you know, and as I've said before, there's all these like studies, and this is what brains do and stuff. And I'm always like the outlier. My brain is just weird. It just works in weird ways. So I basically live my entire life in this very kind of like emotional decision making state.
You do?
Yeah. I basically George Bush. I shoot from the hip all the time. I'm just constantly just shooting from the hip.
I don't think of you that way.
I know.
I think of you almost, Spock-like.
You would think so. Well, fair enough. It doesn't. Again, I'm making decisions based on my gut, but my gut can be based on rational process making.
Okay.
But I am not a make a list of pros and cons and then determine the best solution. I do that at times.
Yeah.
But I am almost exclusively. I have a feeling that this is the route I want to go. Then I just go for it. So, a year and a half ago, I had two roommates, and they had a car. We have two parking spots, and one of them moved out. So then we had one roommate in an open spot for a car. And within about, I don't know, maybe about a day or two, I had just decided, I'm just gonna buy a car. I had no inclination of doing it, and then my decision had been made, just basically just like that. And so if I decide that on something, once that just clicks on,
then you go.
Then I just go do it. And I basically, that's how I live the majority of like my waking life. Like what do I want to eat? I'll think about it, and then a decision will come. I'll make it, and that just.
And you don't worry about it. You don't.
I don't even think about it.
Guess yourself.
Yeah, no. I just live in this kind of unconscious world, and then I just let the decisions come to me. Yeah. Or like if I'm writing papers, and I don't know where to start, I'll read the question a couple times.
Yeah.
I'll go to sleep. I'll wake up. I'll just start writing, and I'll have all the answers. My brain. I just let my.
Well, that's letting your unconscious brain. Do.
Yeah. But basically, it's fun. I recognize that my conscious is just like a blob of goo that's just bumbling around, and so I just let those gut feelings come in, and then I just shoot.
So do you think as a result you tend to make good decisions?
No, I think I make as good or bad decisions as anyone else, but I worry a lot less about the.
Do you think you're unusual in this? Do you think most people are willing to really follow their gut that much?
Yes, I think I'm unusual in this.
So one of the things that I've been telling clients when I work with them, right? So I have clients and they want people to make the decision, make the buy decision, buy the refrigerator, sign up for the online classes or whatever it is. So one of the things I tell them is, in order to encourage a decision being made, you
make it easy.
It's easy?
No, make it easy.
Yeah, make it easy, but also show them evidence of all the things they've already considered. Show them how they've, look, you looked this up, you went here, you did this, so that they get the sense of, I really.
There's nothing more to consider.
I really researched
no more
this
information.
thoroughly. Yeah. Even though that may not be true. But if
you've come to your conclusion.
Yeah.
You've weighed all the variables. It's the sense of loss. You don't want to feel like, oh, I messed up.
Right.
Or what if I do mess up and I make the wrong decision?
Right. The fear of making the wrong decision. Right. That gut feeling. Yeah. All right. I have a few more here. Did you know your pupils dilate when you're making a difficult decision?
That's fun.
So if you had, if you could see what people, if they were looking at your screen and the camera could feed you their data, you'd know that they were thinking hard about it. Let's see. People tend to make decisions at certain calendar events, like on their birthdays or the first of the year, or so here's something kind of weird. Adam Alter, Hal Hirschfield had a theory that big life decisions occur during milestone years, typically those ending in 9. 29, 39, 49, and 59.
That's funny.
Because they say that it's at these times people ask themselves reflecting questions like, what am I doing with my life, and that kind of thing. So
it makes a lot of sense. And so the normal process that's like, oh, you don't have all the information, blah, blah, blah. People are like, no, I need to make a decision, and they don't worry about making the wrong decision as much, and they just shoot.
Yeah.
Just go for it.
So you want to know how they they tested this?
How?
They tested they looked at data from the extramarital affairs dating site Ashley Madison. And also they looked at data from the U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention on suicide. And of the 8 million men at the affairs website looking for a date, more than 950,000 of them were 29, 39, 49, or 59, which is statistically significant. Women showed the same trend as men, but it wasn't as strong. And let's see, over 500 of 500 marathon runners at the athlinks.com website, 74% were in a year ending in 9. And the suicide data from CDC from 2000 to 2011 shows that the suicide rate for both men and women who were in a 9-year was statistically significantly higher. So there's some data about that. So kind of strange things we do when we're trying to make a decision.
Yeah, I think it's just we have this duopoly. I don't think that's a word.
No, I know. What does that mean? What's a duopoly? I think you just invented a word.
Yeah, do something. I don't know how to fish it out. There's a word that I'm looking for. Anyways, I want to know what duopoly means. I'll look that up. Where basically, we have the conscious part of our brains that's just constantly looking for meaning and the right decision, and we just want to be right, and we want things to make sense.
Yeah.
And then we have, it's like it's just the rationalizer, and just constantly trying to rationalize all of the decisions we make.
Yeah.
That we've made the correct decision.
Yeah.
Because we don't want to feel bad, like we made the wrong decision. That'd be no fun.
I think it's also, sometimes.
But then we wander around just making, decisions based on our unconscious, and just doing things all the time because you gotta, right? You're making tacos, you're making pasta today.
But I'm gonna say, here's what I'm gonna say. There's some people out there that talk about this, and some researchers that talk about this like it's a bad thing. Especially I think. Speaking of your field of economics, in the behavioral economics field, like Dan Ariely.
But by the way,
yeah.
I want you to finish your thought. Duopoly, totally a word and exactly what I was trying to say.
Really? What does it mean?
Well, finish your thought and then we'll talk about duopoly.
Okay. So, Dan Ariely has a book called Predictably Irrational. And it's a good book. I'm not going to say it's not a good book. It is a good book, filled with his research and the research of some other people about the whole thing about irrational decision making is what he would call it. And I don't like that term because it makes it sound bad, right? Irrational. We're making decisions with our unconscious. We're making irrational decisions. That's a bad thing. We shouldn't be doing that.
Right. And they're rational.
I think, look, if you had to consciously think and decide every decision in your life, you wouldn't make it 5 feet down the street, right? It works most of the time. The decisions you make with your unconscious, they work because your unconscious is much more able to process huge amounts of information in an accurate and efficient way.
And it doesn't have your nervous, second-guessing self getting in the way.
Yeah, it's making these decisions based
being
on
unsure at every turn.
Data. It's making decisions based on the data of the world around you, about your visual data,
about what your
sensory
past
data,
experiences,
your hearing, your goals, your ideas, the way you were raised, your memories that you're not aware of.
Right.
All these things are coming into play. Now, sometimes
you make the wrong decision because you're fallible.
Or you make a decision that's possibly not best for you because you were,
predisposed to a certain thing that is wrong.
Most of the time, it's doing you just fine. You're surviving, you're not dying.
And I don't want to insult people, but it really doesn't matter, like whether you have tacos or lasagna or you buy a red car or a blue car, that's all great. It just doesn't matter. I'm glad it's important to you.
You're kind of a cynic.
I'm very much so. So so if you're like the president of the free world, your decisions have big consequences.
Yes.
But so if you're George Bush, just making all your decisions from the gut, maybe that's the best way to go. But but for the most part, people have too much worry in your life. People should just relax more about the decisions and just kind of let things come. You can't control the world. Do you want to learn about a duopoly?
What does duopoly mean?
Duopoly, from the Greek duo, obviously meaning two, and polion, as in to sell. Okay, so duopoly. Yeah. So it's a specific type of oligopoly in which only two producers exist in one market.
And what was that second one?
Oligopoly, right?
Oligopoly.
Yeah, so it's like a monopoly.
Yeah.
But instead of a monopoly, which would be one, an oligopoly is a couple, major players dominate an industry.
Oh, okay. And right? So then a duopoly
is when two, right? So if a monopoly would be one, a duopoly would be two.
Okay.
So in this analogy I was making, is that the market is decisions, and the two opolies, the duo, is your unconscious and your conscious, and they are both trying to have dominant control over the market of decisions.
Ah.
And so that's why I was saying we have this strange duopoly system where these two sides kind of battle each other.
Okay. All right. Yeah.
It is a perfect word for the analogy in which I was using.
Yeah, it is. Except I don't want to imply that we have the conscious mind and the unconscious mental processing battling each other.
No. But when we're making decisions, right, whether we make them, very like list of pros and cons or shooting from the hip, right? These are the two sides that are struggling. They're not struggling for control against each other, but it's our internal struggle in which we become we don't know which direction to go in.
Yeah, but it doesn't have to be a struggle. I mean, they can just work together, and you you can confirm one with the other. Right?
Yeah, I guess so.
See, I think the reason some people make the pros and cons list, of which you are not thrilled about that method.
Hey, I look. All I was saying is that I don't do that. It works for lots of people.
But I think part of the reason they do it is to get them to a feeling of confidence. Right? Because,
See, and I just live in a state
you're
of
very confident.
confidence.
You're confident about your gut feelings and your gut choices.
Well, that's because I'm always right.
You're always right.
Yeah, I'm always right. So why would I doubt?
So do you never feel regret about any of your decisions?
Occasionally.
Okay.
I mean,
is that because for
very
that
rare.
decision you made a pro and con list and you didn't follow your gut?
No. I think, I mean, sometimes I just make the wrong decision. Everyone makes the wrong decision sometimes. You mess up every now and then. I think for the vast majority of myself,
yeah,
when I make a decision,
yeah,
I commit myself to that decision,
yeah,
and I try to make the best of it, and
yeah.
I don't worry about what happens if I don't second guess myself. I remain right. It's almost like I'm ignorant to the potentially better decision I made.
Yeah.
And I just, it's like, all right, water under the bridge. It's lost opportunity. I'm gonna move on. And so for example, in all my years of school, which is a lot because I did undergrad and law school, I never dropped out of a class.
Really?
Not once. If I decided to sign up for it, I went. There was a couple times when I switched before the semester started, but I never went and then dropped or switched. Once I committed, I was all in.
That's interesting. It's
weird.
Weird. I think that's unusual. But
really?
But I would think that
this is
it means. Point. Would you say that you don't have as much stress as other people?
Yes.
Because
I have very little stress.
A large amount. I mean, I have a friend right now who's just all bunched up into loops. And most of it is because
you don't know which way you're going.
Yeah, or when he makes a decision, he then doesn't he spends all of his mental energy thinking about how maybe that was the wrong decision.
Yeah, so there's a whole brand of economics, right, where basically it's a sunken cost, right? So let's say you've invested in a big project.
Yeah.
And it's a disaster.
Okay.
So then you're trying to decide what to do, right? Do you just stop everything? Do you and start working on a different project, right?
Yeah.
Well, if you allow the amount of money that you've already spent to be a factor in your decision moving forward, you will make the wrong decision. So the way to come to the correct decision is you just say, okay, everything and all the effort and time I've spent up to now is a sunk cost, right? We've already spent it. It's in the past. Like we can't get that money back. It's sunk, it's gone.
Yeah.
So you just draw a line and you just look at moving forward, what are our best options? And that's how you come to the correct decision, right? Because if you want to make the most amount of money, what you wasted money on in the past has no influence on how to make money in the future. That's right.
All right. So now I have another question for you.
Right. So if you spend a bunch of money on a project and it's not going to work, continuing to throw money at it, right, until you come up with something, that's how you get really bad products, for example.
So you've this is kind of the way you think and the way you make decisions, right? Mm-hmm. Have you always been that way, or did you decide to do that because when you went to economic school and learned what you just explained?
I think I don't want to say always, but at least since, college, late teens. Yeah. I just.
So you think it's just kind of built into you, the way you tend to think, or do you?
Yeah. I would say so. So like, So like another example is that so I was a freshman in college and I wanted to go to the School of Business at the time, even though I ended up doing economics instead. And in order to go to the School of Business, you actually had to have a certain prereq of foreign language.
Yeah.
And I had done a little bit of French in high school, but I didn't really like it. So I needed I was just gonna start over.
Yeah.
And so I walked up to a booth in Madison of the foreign language table.
Yeah.
And I just said, hey, I want to learn a foreign language. I need to learn one for the School of Business. But I suck at foreign languages. It's just not something I'm good at. And I've never been any good at it. So what can I learn that no one else knows that's also useful that would give me like a competitive advantage? You know, because like, yeah, I could take Spanish, but like I'm never going to be able to like in my head. Now, of course, this is completely wrong, but in my head, right? Well, like I'm never going to be able to compete with people who grew up bilingual. And there's so many bilingual Spanish speakers out there that, that's not going to give me a competitive advantage. Oh, so I was like, what should I take? She's like, well,
I actually know the ending to this.
Yeah,
story.
I know. So she's like, well, there's Chinese. So yeah, okay. And then, but I'm like, yeah, there are a lot of people a lot of people in China who also speak English, so that doesn't really help me. And then there's the middle of the Iraq War. She's like, well, there's Arabic, and I'm like, yeah, no one knows Arabic, and it's a billion, like 1.5 billion people. I'm like, okay, thanks. And then I did 5 semesters of Arabic and lived in Cairo for a year, right? It wasn't right, and I didn't make a pros and cons list. I just said thanks and signed up. But
you didn't end up going to business school either.
Well, in fairness, that's because I didn't really know what it was. Like this was before I took a single college class.
Oh, okay.
So I was looking into the business school, and I wanted to, because you couldn't get in until like your junior year or something. Anyways,
okay, I get it.
Just
all right.
the
I thought the
credits
two decisions were intertwined.
No. It just I knew I needed to have this in order to get into the business school, so I wanted to leave my options open. But yeah, at the time, right? Like I haven't even moved into the dorm. This was at like the pre-college, like pick your classes before you even get to college, thing. And that's how I just made a decision to study that foreign language, and then I stuck with it for forever, just because that's.
So I feel like we have like two different kind of clusters of duopolies. Two different, duopoly sounds like doo-wop. Duopolies.
Well, not to the younger generation who doesn't know what doo-wop is.
I feel like we have two different clusters here that we could summarize and give people advice on. And one would be if you're trying to get other people to make a decision, here are the things you could do. And then there's if you're trying to improve the quality of your life, here's the things you could do. So on the one side, if you're trying to get people to make a decision, help them feel confident, show a picture, right? Catch them when they're at the age that ends with a 9, right? That would be that cluster. And then on the other side, it sounds like if you want to live with less stress, make a decision, commit to it, and let it go.
Yeah, absolutely. That's what I think. And you try to make the best of what it is, and just understand that the decisions you make have consequences. And so if you make a decision, and it's the wrong decision, that's okay. You just it's water under the bridge, and you just move on, and you try to make the best decision
for the next one
from the situation you're in now. And it's easy to say, and it's really hard for people to let go. And there's what ifs, and you can.
Or I should have done this. I should have done that.
Yeah.
But it's in the past. Live in the present.
And,
live for
whatever.
the now.
I like worst case is you completely messed up and it's a disaster, and that's oh well. You're not that important.
This is starting to sound very Zen-like.
Is that Zen?
Yeah, yeah. The Zen would be, I mean, and also kind of mindfulness, idea, which is just live in the present. And I think Zen would be, well, maybe not Zen, but this idea of, hey, you're not that important, right? You're just part of this whole system, and get the ego out of it, right? Just,
this is also very Rick and Morty, which is a wonderful animated show.
Yeah.
It's just a wonderful show, but it's even one of the main characters is he's a very smart scientist. He's very much like a cynic about everything.
Yeah.
And so his kind of philosophy is, well, you're gonna die and nothing you do matters. But of course I don't want to give too much of the show away. But you should really watch it. It's very funny.
I'll have to check it out. I don't know that one.
Oh, it's really good. Yeah. So I guess if that's Zen, then I suppose
that's what we're saying. Well, that's a good way to end. Can we end our podcast? I have a decision I would like people to make.
Yeah.
I would like them to
pay me.
Just what?
I said pay me.
No, I would like them to decide to share the podcast with other people.
On a related note.
Yeah.
I recently did a webinar for user test. I think it's usertesting.com.
Yeah, usertesting.com. You did.
And it's a side cop to Snapchat. The truths and myths of generational differences.
Yeah.
It's a good talk. We got a good crowd. You should. We'll post up some links. You can go watch it.
We'll do a podcast on that too.
Because it's free. Well, something like that. But the point is that if you ever want us to come give a talk, you should send us a message.
You can bring in either or both of us.
Yeah, the good news is I'm a lot cheaper than Susan. So this is
hey,
work in your
you
favor.
get what you pay for.
Oh.
Just kidding. Just kidding.
Funny.
No,
funny.
you're less expensive because I don't think you will be for long once people get to know you, but
that's what I like to hear.
I may be a more known quantity.
Also, I'm younger, so traveling is still fun. Not to say it's not fun for you, but it's more of a...
It's more fun for you. Yeah. So you're more willing to go to some of the far-flung places that I actually get invited to and sometimes go to, but not that much.
Yeah. This is all true.
Yeah. And you can speak Arabic, so...
No, that's it. I remember the part where I said I was really horrible at foreign languages.
You still were, even after all that training?
There was a point, maybe 5 or 6 years ago, where I was kind of conversational in a weird, like, Egyptian dialect.
But you've lost it?
I could never remember the vocab.
But you'll be better if you do get invited to an Arabic-speaking country. You'd be better at navigating it than I would be.
Oh, sure, yes. Getting a cab, buying things in stores.
Reading a sign,
saying thank you and sorry. So that, yes. Oh, yeah, I can actually read things just fine.
Yeah.
I don't know what the words mean, but I can...
But you can.
Well, no, if I don't know the word, like the vocab.
Yeah.
Like I said, that's always been my problem.
Yeah.
I can't remember names. I can't remember vocab in foreign languages. It's it's my weakest point.
I'm kind of the opposite.
Yes, yeah, you're great.
I love learning foreign languages, and I can usually retain them pretty
I'm good
well.
at the grammar rules. I'm great at the grammar rules. I just cannot remember the vocab. I'm amazing with faces.
Okay.
I'm just amazing. Like if I see someone on the street, I know that I know them. And I'm almost always correct. So, but
all right. So there you go.
Invite
us to speak at your event, and share the podcast and rate the podcast. Do we have any other requests for decisions from our audience today?
No, that's we've made plenty of requests today.
Okay.
All right. This was fun. If you have any questions or comments, you can email us at info@theteamw.com. And have a happy Memorial Day here for those of you here in the States. Yep, all good.
Sounds
Susan,
good.
thanks so much.
Bye.
Bye.